Hey there, Banditos. Welcome to the latest episode of the Dollar Bin Bandits. I'm Mike Farah, and today we have for you another great creator. His name is Evan Dorkin, and you know Evan from primarily, I'm sure, Milk and Cheese, as well as his Dork comics that included Eltingville Club, the kind of takedown of toxic fan culture. He gets into a lot of that as well. It's kind of a rambling interview. Evan will be the first to tell you. He likes to go down on the tangents. But we do get into, his work on Milk and Cheese and Dork and talk a little bit about animation. He worked with his wife, Sarah Dyer, on Space Coast Coast to Coast, Superman, the animated series. We talk about Fight Man, which you may not know about. And Evan wants to change that. And I think we should all change that and bring Fight Man back into the fold. But also talked about Beasts of Burden, which has a new collection out. We get into his new work a little bit with EC on Catacomb of Torment. And yeah, just get into everything, everything. We go wide on this interview that has to do with comics and pop culture and the industry and fans and all of that. So let me stop rambling so I can let Evan start rambling. This is Evan Dorkin. Welcome, Evan Dorkin, to the show. Evan, how are you?
I'm living a dream. Thank you for having me. And
So
I got a cat on falling
you
asleep on
can't
me.
you can't go wrong with
She's going to
the
sleep now.
cat.
Yeah. Yeah. We've been talking for a few minutes before recording started and she was acting up and now she is really goofy looking. So yeah, you will only see one on the video, you only see one hand until she wakes up. So yeah, I'm doing fine actually. I'm doing all right. I had a clean bill of health at the gastroenterologist.
Yay. That's what
Yeah.
we always want to hear.
Getting
Clean bill of
older,
health.
yeah, getting older, you do want to hear that. Yeah.
So, we are going to start with our non-patented first question, which is, how did you discover comic books or comics in
Uh,
general?
well, I'm old enough that I just turned 60 last month. I'm old enough to remember newsstands, tobacco shops that, had racks of comics, grocery stores had them. I can't, well, the thing is, newspapers were, healthy back then. Newspapers was still a main source of news and entertainment. So probably the newspaper comics are where I first got into them. And I don't have a great memory of my childhood, which is probably a defense mechanism, and I should be grateful for much of it. So yeah, I mean everybody had newspapers, grandparents, parents, and businesses. You go to the haircut, go get your haircut. There's newspapers. There were also actually a lot of magazines had comics. So you were surrounded by comics. They weren't talked about the way that they were in generations past, where uh, Hal Foster and anybody who had a comic strip was a celebrity back when my parents and grandparents were born. But it was still healthy as far as the breadth of it. You'd go to a grocery store and there'd always be a spinner rack of comics. So I mean, you couldn't walk somewhere without hitting comics when I was a kid, and they'd be in. I do remember early on, my mother got me a subscription to a magazine called Children's Digest, and they reprinted Tintin in English, and they also reprinted Peanuts, who's often on the cover, and that's a big memory. Newspaper strips, I love Peanuts. I liked humor strips. Mad Magazine, I mean, that's older, but those are the things I mostly remember. And Marvel Comics was the big thing for me. But I gravitated towards all sorts of comics. I mean, if I went to the dentist, you it was, you were pretty sure to find a book of New Yorker cartoons or similar about dentists or doctors or the barbers. I remember the barber always had comics and books that were, single panel collections. So you were surrounded by it. Plus, it was like shut the kid up, give them a comic because you could find them everywhere. I never subscribed to any comics. I was always able to get them because my father, who my mother divorced when I was 3, didn't really know how to talk to us or care to talk to us when we saw him on Sunday. So we went to the Te Amo smoke shop and newsstand on Kings Highway every Sunday night before he took us home. And basically, he had money. He did well as an electrician. He just said, we were able to buy whatever we wanted, my sister Randy and I. So I bought every Marvel that was out except for pretty much the whatever heroes did not have shirts on. Wasn't a big fan of Son of Satan or Conan or Cull or DC had Tarzan. I mean, I liked uniforms. I like costumes. Maybe that's something I was projecting about my own chubbiness, but I didn't like guys who took their shirts off or their pants and wore, underwear only. I liked superheroes straight. I didn't like horror. I regret
What
this. I wish I was picking up Tomb of Dracula back then and some other Man Thing and things like that. But I got every Marvel, and my sister got every Harvey and Archie. And I would read all of her comics when I was done with my comics. And I do remember the first four comics I ever bought. I was already into Marvel. Somehow they had gotten into my little kid hands. But the four I bought with my own dollar was two Fantastic Four issues, the current one and the reprint in Marvel's Greatest Comics, and the current Spider-Man and the reprint in Marvel Tales. And Mysterio was in both Spider-Man, which was funny. I mean, back then you could catch up with things because of the reprints would tell you the backstory of who you were reading about in the modern comics. So there was not a there were crossovers. There were crossovers. In fact, the first issue of Marvel's Greatest Comics I bought had Thor, Spider-Man, and Daredevil on the cover, which was like knocking me out and everybody. It was pretty exciting. I mean, I must have been 9, 10, because you could walk around on your own back then without getting your parents arrested or having somebody take you off the streets thinking that you were being abused because you walked to the grocery store by yourself.
right.
But also that your mother could send you to buy cigarettes and probably booze. Although I didn't, I was always buying the Kent King cigarettes. But yeah, the thing is, I lived in Brooklyn. I guess I should say that because I always heard from other people that they couldn't find comics necessarily easily because they lived in a small town or they lived in the country, rural areas. Brooklyn was, you could just walk in any direction. You would hit a bookstore, comics, hobby shop. I mean, it was pretty great growing up as far as being a media nerd. Good television stations, lots of movie theaters, a lot of magazine distribution. So you got your Famous Monsters, Starlog later on, Fangoria. So everything nerdy would show up pretty much, except Charlton Comics and Atlas Comics could not find them. But I had friends who did find them,
Really?
probably from their divorced dads. And I would so Clifford Black would have Atlas. I'd read that. Mike Kemper had DC, and he had an EC book, which was a big deal for me. He had an EC hardcover that he lent me when I was sick. So I mean, that's the thing. Every kid I knew read comics. The people who made them weren't famous in the weird way that if you could sell 2,000 comics now, you are better known on the internet than you would have been selling a million comics in the 70s. It's
Right.
just such a weird inverse situation. But yeah, I grew up a total comic fiend. Later on, worked in comic stores that opened on Staten Island, a fantastic store, and became a DC fan in the in high school because my friends, I stopped reading comics. It's a long answer, sorry. Stopped reading comics, and then my friends Tommy Lynch, who I still know, and Mark Amundsen, they were DC fiends, and I had stopped reading comics because I got into animation. I wanted to be an animator. And I guess at that point, my father was I was not seeing him. I dumped my father. I divorced him. When we stopped seeing dad, we told him to stay the hell home with his nasty wife. And they kept showing me the comics, and I'm like, I don't want, But George Perez and Mark Wolfman were on Teen Titans, and I loved Perez's art. He was one of my favorites at Marvel. Him, Kirby, the bullpen, the usual suspects. And I was like, they kept telling me the stories, and it was like drug. The first one's free. And I went to a newsstand. I picked up Tales of Teen Titans #2. I must have been about, I don't know, 15, 16, and I fell right back into comics like a lunatic, worse than ever. And then the Fantastic Store opened, which was a direct market full comic store. And I ended up working there, and the rest is mystery, misery and history. But yeah, that's it. Lots of comics in my life. I don't have that
Yeah.
many comics anymore, though. I have a lot of collections, books with spines. I really got into those, but I never got into back issue collecting. It was always too expensive.
Right. Well, as our name goes, we're into certain back issue.
Dollar bin. Do they still
Yeah,
have
yeah.
dollar bins or are they
Oh
$2 bins?
yeah, yeah.
Good.
I mean,
I remember
there's some where there's $1 and then $2 bin,
I
$5,
remember I
things like that.
remember quarter bins. I've been getting this. I've been getting the itch. I haven't been
Yeah,
to conventions in a long time. Uh, Pre-COVID, I took a year off, and then COVID made everybody take some time off. And since COVID, well, it's still with us. We're still a couple hundred people still die a week, but uh, or a month. I forget what the statistic I just saw was. Anyway, let's not be a bummer right now. I went to a small convention in Staten Island, the New Dork High School convention, and I was really happy to be busy the entire time, but I really wanted to check out some bins. I've been getting this itch to buy some comic books,
yeah.
and got to go to a convention, I guess, for that. But I haven't. We only have big shot conventions out here generally, like New York Comic Con, which is a giant, giant pain in the ass.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I've been to it. It's
it's like if I want to be in a
hard to
crowd like
move.
if I want to be in a crowd like that, there better be a good band on a stage in front of me, It's
Right.
good. I don't want to be crushed under Funko Pops. It's not how I want to go. Yeah. But yeah, I
Although
miss
you get your name in the news,
Yeah,
being
that's
crushed by
true.
Funko
That's true.
Pops.
It's probably the only way I would, other than, political assassination. But
Right, right. So a lot to unpack from that answer, but one thing that occurred to me, probably the funniest part, is your what is the opposite of a penchant? Your penchant against the bare-chested characters, and I wonder where Power Man fits in this, right?
oh
Because
no,
he's not
power.
completely bare-chested, but he has a
I like this because
quite low.
I don't usually get asked the deep nerd questions about, well, because usually it's like, no, I'm not. This is, believe me, I'm excited about this. This is fun for me because I've been talking about my career and about couple of specific projects. Yeah, I just did a talk with Derek Thompson for a Predator and Aliens podcast for the Predator comics that I worked on, and that was different. And before that, I did just a short interview for Back Issue about the comic Mad Dog that I wrote, which was one of the worst things I've ever worked on that I ever wrote. The Ty Templeton half of the comic is terrific, but yeah, nobody ever asked me things like that. No, Power Man was totally okay. I love Power Man. Big Luke
Okay,
Cage fan.
good.
He ended up in the Defenders. I remember the Plant Man issues, the Red Guardian. Yeah, that's I liked him. I mean, you could
He
tell he was
wasn't
written by
fully bare-chested.
no, you could tell he was written by a white guy even when you're a kid. You're like, where's my money, honey, and all that crap. But yeah, I thought Luke Cage was great. I thought it was such a big deal when he fought the original Power Man, the villain, over the
Right.
name. I just thought that I didn't know how to really uh analyze it in my head, but there was something so meta about it. There was just they're fighting over the copyright that
Right,
Marvel
exactly.
needs to keep them in stickers and stuff. And it was just really funny. These guys were pissed. He was pissed that this guy took his name. What a great idea for a story.
There
I
you go.
never remembered reading anything that vanish and funny. It's just a funny way for continuity to work out. Because me and all my friends were all like, yeah, Power Man's that guy who hates the Avengers and has a really ugly suit with the horrible brown color combination. We didn't say that, but yeah, Power Man was just this jerk off running around. I don't know if he was in the Lethal Legion, hanging out with the Living Laser and all those guys, the Swordsman, I think, early on in Avengers. But it was just very, very funny that this guy. But I know I thought Power Man was great. I still like
Good.
Power Man. I don't watch the shows or anything like that, but I always thought he was a really cool character. There's this Marvel toys that they put out, these little tiny retro figures.
Right.
I forget what the name of the line was, but Derek Robertson sent me a bunch of them. Again, started me off. I was like, here's a free, because I really thought they looked cool. They're very simple, and they're all the 70s versions, my growing up. And there's a Luke Cage. I need to try, and a Nova. I need to track those down. And the Falcon. I love the Falcon. Cap and the Falcon I love that book.
Yeah.
Woof. Even any
Yeah.
Englehart was great, but Kirby was great too. I thought those were fantastic pairing of characters. And yeah, just dug them. The Falcon Mego figure was one of my favorites. I wish I
Yeah,
didn't.
they're both known for their duos, right? Captain America and Falcon and Power Man and Iron Fist.
Yeah, Power Man and Iron Fist seems like a really. I just kind of was going off superhero comics when they got their own title, I think. Or they, I'm not sure how that goes. I must have bought a couple. But yeah, I mean, they but they I read, yeah, Luke Cage Hero for Hire, and then Luke Cage Power Man. I bought every issue that came out. Um, Captain America, every issue. Yeah, I picked up everything. I mean, I'm trying to, yeah, Conan, I never got into Conan. Just never. I don't like the Robert E. Howard stories much either. I mean, I like his stuff that touches on the Lovecraft mythos a little bit. I mean, I like some of his pulp stuff, but I just never got into sword and sorcery that had a barbarian type in them.
Hmm.
I'm more of a Fafford and the Grey Mouser, or Nif the Lean. I'm not a huge, sword and sorcery guy, but I mean, I will read it if it comes up in an anthology. And yeah, Conan, he was such a brooding, boring dude, sitting on his throne, or he always wins. He always kicks everybody's ass the same way. It wasn't in, he had no powers except, hirsuteness or something. I don't know. Just never interested me. But I would buy some of the oddball. I loved Howard the Duck. I loved the Defender. I loved anything Steve Gerber worked on, although I couldn't figure Omega out as a kid. I'd like to go back and check those out. But yeah, I never, trying to think. I don't think I bought any of the monster books because they
Hmm.
just seem silly to me, even though I was a huge Universal Monsters fan. Frankenstein, Tomb of Dracula, Werewolf by Night. I was like, what is he by day? What is he, like, an accountant? I don't. The Mummy. They had a
Isn't it
mummy.
redundant? Werewolf by
Yeah, they
Night?
had
Of course
yeah,
it's.
they had a mummy too. I just never got Man Thing. I dug, but I just didn't pick up his. I liked when he appeared in other books, but I didn't. I should have bought everything. What a schmuck I was. My father didn't care what we bought. Comics for 25 cents. I think they ended up at 30 or 35 by the time I kicked him to the curb. We both kicked him to the curb, me and my sister. So I just should have bought the DC ones also. I could have sold them to friends. I just didn't, I've never had a business sense. That's why I'm in comics. That's why I'm a cartoonist and not a, publisher,
Yeah.
or whatever. But yeah, anyway, that's a long, long answer to yes. I liked Power Man. I guess I should have just said that. I liked Luke Cage.
That's okay. We'll see what we can get through, and maybe we'll have to have a series of these. Um,
Yeah, you asked me about Nova, and that's an entire episode. My friend and I read Nova #1 and tried to do sound effects for it as a radio play. My friend
oh,
Paul and I love Nova. His power
that's
is
very
really
cool.
kind of boring. I'm sure they've tried to do something with him because all he does is bang into things. You know what I
Well,
mean?
yeah,
He
I
rock
mean,
he,
I
he
think
rockets
they've
off and he punches you.
right, exactly. So you're not going to build a comic around just the guy and his powers. So they
Well, if I
built
remember,
sort of like the
Wolfman was
mythos
basically
around him.
felt in retrospect, Wolfman was just doing Spider-Man pretty much. He had this cast of characters, and they're all wacky, and he had problems with his parents, and he needed a girlfriend or whatever, and it was all about him coping the same way Peter Parker did. But the problem is Peter Parker, Spider-Man's a terrific character with a lot of potential because of his power set, and uh, Nova is kind of a guy who in wrestling only has a spear. You know, I mean, he has a punch, but he's supposed to do those open-handed. But whatever, we won't get into wrestling.
Well, he has a
But
helmet.
but the thing is, Nova's costume was fantastic,
Yes,
and he was visual. The flying was super
right.
visual, but
Yeah.
they really had problems creating a group of villains for him. And but I dug it. Yeah, Nova was what. Yeah, I love though that first issue is he's here, the human rocket or whatever, the man called Nova. And when they canceled him, they said he's there, he's gone on the cover. And Carmen Infantino, who I like a lot as an artist on certain things, was not a good choice for Nova. But anyway, so you're bringing the fan out in me here,
Yeah.
the
Well,
fan talk.
he's well, the concept has evolved, whether you like it or not. I'm not so sure. I'm a big fan into more of Nova as one of many Novas, almost a la Green
Right.
Lantern Corps.
I'm aware of the Nova Legion and all that crap, and well, it's built up in the first one that it's a space that it's, yeah, his origin is very Green Lantern.
Yeah,
Guy
right.
crashes and says, "Here, you take the gun,"
You
and
go, your turn.
it allows writers to basically go, well, obviously there's going to be more of these novas and Nova Prime and all that, but yeah, I mean, again, the powers are nothing, so
Right.
so instead of one Nova banging into things, you've got an army of space Novas banging into things, you
It's like a
know.
massive cosmic pinball game.
Yeah, it's just like a ricochet everywhere. Just a lot of people crashing into stuff, like it's the movie Star Crash, just shooting rockets through the windows. I can't see them holding guns. That would just be lousy. Yeah, I mean, Nova needed help. I guess it's not super popular. Otherwise, he'd have his own book more often. But
True. Every once in a while he gets sort of a good kick in the pants
you
and
gotta because you
someone
have to have him on the cover of something every few years to keep the
right,
copyright
right. It's
going.
a
Otherwise,
copyright continuity.
Nova is gonna come and fight him for the name, just like
Right.
Power.
Exactly. We,
They'll
we want
both
to
bang
avoid
it.
that at all costs. That's
I banged
the
into people before you ever banged into people. But yeah, he really is just a human rocket, which is just, I
right.
guess it's just the torpedo with his legs blurred.
Yeah. Well, and they have multiple of those characters as well. I mean, there's
Yeah, but as a kid, it was all very thrilling whenever a
oh,
new
of
character would
course.
come up.
Of course.
But now nobody in their right mind, other than it worked out for him, but nobody in their right mind other than Rob Liefeld will say, "Here, Marvel, here's all my childhood comic characters I came up with. You can take them and own them."
Yeah.
Because nobody will do that. They'd rather go to Image or become Hellboy or whatever.
Right.
Why would you create a new character for Marvel? But Liefeld, as dopey a move as it was, it sure made dividend. It's the only character that's come out, in Marvel and DC that's blown up in the last. I mean, he's already what, 30 years old. That's
When it
a,
when he
a new
introduces Deadpool.
yeah. I mean, Marvel and DC don't really create new characters that blow
No,
up.
that's
Harley
correct.
Quinn is transported from the
The
animation,
show. Yeah.
and you go, well, who else? Who's a big shot? Well, Deadpool. That's really it. So it worked out for him to actually sell his character to Marvel, but um, that's one in a million, I guess, at this point. But
Yeah.
yeah, nobody brings. That's the thing I loved about. One of the things I loved about there'd be new characters constantly, new villains, new organizations, new supporting characters, new superheroes would show up. And then now it's just the same, make the Hulk red, make Gwen Stacy, Deadpool, and Spider-Man. It's anything can be good, but looking at it on paper, it's just such a creative dead end to keep the same. You can only work with the same seven ingredients or same 100 ingredients, but all you
Right.
can do is recolor, put them in space, give them a gun, uh, put them in a new costume. It's pretty limited.
I
I
always thought there's got to be a way to. I know it would be more complicated, but a way to share rights with a creator that incentivizes them to create
Sure
for
there is a
that
way, but
for that company. Yeah,
they
they
don't
don't
want
want to
to
do
do
it.
it. The
Yeah.
way to do it is to say, hey, I guess something that would be more equitable to make it like when DC made the deal with sex abuser Neil Gaiman, to the way that they worked out Sandman, where I think he had more, his name's on it, he makes more money, it looked like, and things like that. But obviously nobody's going to give up the rights to anything. Look at the Watchmen deal. They won't, you know, that was terrible. DC could have done the right thing. But instead, they're going to exploit I mean, to a corporate person, to an investor, they did the right thing by shafting Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons, and exploiting the Watchmen beyond that comic, and spinning it off and crossing it over and all that shit. Because yeah, you run out of things to do. DC's in the same boat as Marvel. Nobody's
Well,
going to
yeah.
create. They're going to create. They tried to create another Harley Quinn, if I remember, and it was Punchline or
Yeah,
Punchline, right?
I think it's
And it's
yeah, I
just
think
such
it's
an
Punchline.
obvious.
Yeah.
Why don't they put her on a skateboard like Poochie from The Simpsons? She was such an obvious. We're trying to do something, uh, you know, new.
Right. Edgy and cool.
Fucking complete fail, probably. I don't, I see the press releases. I don't see the comments, and I get it. I feel bad for editorial because their hands are tied. It's not their decision. I'm sure they'd love to work with some new characters and get some new ideas in there as far as that goes, than to keep having to go back and, how many Deadpool variants can we have? How many Gwen characters can we have? How many Hulks, Spider-Mans? It's got to be a bummer to have to keep spinning the same wheel and just going, well, here's new creators' takes on them. And I'm sure that there's still fun comics coming out. I'm not saying that you can't make good, fun comics with the same characters. A new person comes in, new ideas. But between the fact that nobody wants to give them their darlings, nobody wants to give them their babies. If they have a cool superhero costume, they're going to take it, do it in Image if they get enough of a rep to be able to do an Image book. They're going to take Invincible. They're not going to do Invincible or whatever or the Image characters. The same reason Image first started was a good. I think they kind of, it was a bit of a fuck up the way they did everything, but the idea was solid. We have our own names. We're going to do it ourselves. But then Image for what, Image is different now than it was. Image became just a little Marvel and DC, hiring
Right.
everybody out, not doing their own work, getting into lawsuits, fucking people over, politics, bullshit. I mean, it just became, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. And the thing is, between the fact that you really don't get new characters, and there's such weird editorial politics these days. You can't, this has been going on for quite a while though. And one of the reasons I'm less interested in superhero comics as a freelancer than I was when I was a fan is because you go, well, I have a great story for the Kingpin, or I have a really interesting story that uses this. And they go, well, that office controls Kingpin, the Spider-Man office controls this, Daredevil office. So you can't tell you a really good story, even though we would love to sell a really good story. I'm not saying I pitched this, but people were stymied all the time because it was like, yeah, you can't have Hawkeye because Hawkeyes do it. And you're like, well, you're really cutting yourself off from telling a lot of interesting stories when people come in. And the story should be more important than the office, in my opinion. But I guess so the office has become little fiefdoms, you know,
Hmm.
and you can't use Superman because of this, although they seem to cross the characters over all over the goddamn place. But when you start saying I can't use certain villains, when I was a kid, the Gladiator showed up here, there, the Beetle, these jerks. I mean, true, these are jerks. The Beetle's a jerk, but a real loser. But he'd show up in Daredevil, he'd show up in Spider-Man. I mean, when they needed him, if you needed a Frightful Four guy, they threw Claw in there, or whatever. The Sandman could show up in other books. Now everything's striated, everybody's so uptight. So yeah, I mean, again, I think that's one advantage that I had growing up in the 70s as a fan, was that you didn't know what was coming next. And I feel, in 2025, what's coming next. It's going to be more Kingpin and Doctor Doom and the Joker, and, more Deadpool and more Batman. And I mean, obviously people are still enjoying these books, and I'm cynical, but I liked the idea of there is a character contract. I have one on Fight Man. I will never see a dime on it because Fight Man, nobody likes him. The joke was that everyone hates Fight Man in the comic, and it turns out everybody at Marvel hates him. He's never appeared in another comic except for two that I wrote. One of his villains got used. I created all these dumb villains. I thought somebody would kill them off in a crossover, right? Only one, Dr. Orangutan, a Nazi ape. He's the only one someone's used, and I would never have thought in a million years anybody would use an orangutan Nazi in a comic. Uh, but he's in one of the Cold War Avengers books in the 50s. That makes sense.
Right.
But he's so stupid. Plus, he died, supposedly. Nothing ever really dies. But yeah, so Five Man's never shown up. But I did have to sign a contract. And supposedly, if he showed up in the back of some movie, or they made a toy of him, although I don't think anybody makes money off the toys, because I think the accounting on the toys is toy company accounting, which is even better than Marvel accounting, probably. As we didn't make any money, here's the next line. We didn't make any money. Here's another two lines. So I don't know anybody who's ever made money off an action figure, even if they sell fantastically. But yeah, there is they did do it. They bent over a little bit to allow the possibility of you making money. But I think it's like there are people who have made money. I mean, I think like Len Wein made more money on a police officer that was used in the Batman Michael Keaton movie, or whoever created.
Hmm.
I heard the check for that was better than you'd make creating Wolverine at the time. Yeah, I mean, there's no incentive to create original characters at Marvel and DC, and that's a shame. In some ways. I mean, I prefer people do their own work and own it, but it robs the fans of mystery and of not knowing, it's you've got one roulette wheel and they throw the ball on it, it comes up all the same characters. You can't add numbers to a roulette wheel, and you can't add characters to Marvel and DC unless you go in there and you go, fuck it, I'll give them a couple because I just really want to tell this story, or I really want to get this character to Marvel. I mean, Fight Man was just a joke, so I didn't mind having Marvel take it. I couldn't really do the joke without Marvel paying me for it. The whole joke was about Marvel and DC and superheroes at the time. I mean, it was just about what if a fan became a superhero? What if a real asshole? Not that all fans are assholes, but what if this real misogynist jerk off moron became a superhero, which became a big thing later on, but in 93 wasn't that huge. But the idea of it being published by one of the big companies was part of the joke. If I just did it as my own comic at SLG, nobody would nobody would have given a shit. And it turns out nobody gave a shit anyway. But there's like 500 Fight Man fans out there still hoping that he shows up and fights the Beetle.
Yeah, you're part of the fabric of the Marvel universe.
I'm afraid Edge. I'm afraid Edge at the end of the Marvel universe. I mean, I only worked on comics that nobody gave a shit about. There isn't one comic that I worked at for Marvel that really had any kind of impact. I mean, it was either stuff like Bill and Ted, which is all licensed and nobody cared. Fight Man was a joke, and they didn't let me use Marvel villains, so it didn't tie in at first, so nobody cared. I did a Thing miniseries, but it was Startling Stories, so nobody cared. It hasn't even been collected. And some of the Captain America stuff I did shows up. Well, what's funny is Fight Man and the Agent X issues that I wrote have been rolled into the Deadpool trades.
Mm.
So 30 years later, I'm seeing royalty checks because of the Deadpool omnibus and the trades, which is hilarious. So Fight Man has had a new and they let him be part of the universe. They actually gave him a page in the Marvel handbook. So officially he's in there, but nobody he's like the drunk uncle, or the kid who's got gas problems at the party. Nobody wants to go near him. Nobody wants to take pictures of him. I mean, I just figured Bendis would kill him or something as a joke or something. No,
Right.
nobody's
Nothing.
touched him. So yeah, that's my great brilliant career at Marvel.
Well, once they hear this, somebody will go and kill Fight Man for you.
No, no, you can't kill Fight Man. That's the thing, though. You can't kill him. That was the whole. If you ever look up Agent X, I think it's 11 and 12 or 10 and 11. I don't know. The whole joke was that Agent X, who was not Deadpool, hint, hint, yes, he is, was hired to kill Fight Man from the Fight Man 1 book. The ex-wife hired him, and he can't kill him because he's invulnerable. So they just keep, every time they try to kill him, they wreck a bridge and kill the people on the bridge by accident. They poison him. But the thing is, he's suicidal. He's so depressed about his life. He wants him to kill him. So hijinks ensue, and then they fight. They beat up a city. It's a long story. It's and clearly not that popular. But people who buy Deadpool trades are stuck with it.
What else are you going to read once you're done with the trade?
I don't know.
Oh,
Well,
that's what I'm
all
saying.
three,
You're
all
right.
three, all three issues are in the trade. The funniest thing is the last trade like apologizes practically. They go, "Why is Fight Man in this trade?" Well, we'll tell you. We have to.
Look inside to find out.
We were. Oh no, it's in the inside. They wouldn't put that on. The Fight Man one shot got put in the last Deadpool trade to basically go, we have to explain this stupid character we don't like because he's in 2 issues of Agent X, and we're reprinting all the Agent X stuff in the next trade. So it's really funny that I'm like this. I'm like got these apology characters running around that nobody gives a shit about, but I got to check. I'm gonna get another one.
There you go.
Hilarious. I can go
Uh,
buy a dinner.
I'm going to put you down for a Fight Man revamp and a character study on Punchline. Those are your
Oh,
next projects.
okay. Well, I guess I'll be doing that as a web comic, and then I'll probably get sued. I'll get a cease and desist from Marvel. Look, we hate the character, but you can't do this. Go away. Go away. Marvel
All
was a
right.
lot of fun. Marvel was still fun in the 90s, though. I hope it's still fun now for people. But I got lunch is where I came up with Fight Man. So free Marvel lunch,
There you
goofing
go.
around, telling Kevin Nolan I would help his career when Kevin Nolan was huge and everybody loved Kevin Nolan. And I kept saying, I'll help your career. And he goes, what? I have this book you can work on called Fight Man. And he laughs and he goes, what's it about? And I said, he fights, man. And that became an in-office joke that eventually became a comic book. So I shouldn't complain. And I'm kidding. Marvel actually really went to bat for me when I was doing stuff for them in the early 90s. I loved being there. I absolutely loved working with the people that I worked with. Fabian Nicieza gave me lots of room to have fun on the comics I did, and Mark Gruenwald and why am I blanking on his name? Tom, the guy who was writing
Falco.
Tom DeFalco. They really were pushing me to do more work with them. Sarah, my wife, Sarah Dyer, she did a development for Valkyrie when Valkyrie wasn't being used for anything, and she ended up not writing it, but they ended up using her material in a Valkyrie one shot, put her on the cover for the copyrights comic, which was pretty funny.
You've already stated that you kind of started. You had a interest in animation at first, probably maybe more than comics, at least in terms of a career
No,
uh,
I mean, I wanted to be a comic
focus.
artist when I was a little kid. I wanted to be a cartoonist. I knew that like off the bat. I wanted to draw comics. I never thought of them as being that I'd write them. I always thought that I'd get read enough in Foom, the Friends of Old Marvel fan magazine that they put out, and a few things about comics that you got to learn about through letters pages and origins and sons of origins of Marvel Comics. The information was not as easy to get about how the industry worked, how the medium worked, how you made comics, uh, physically made them, and what supplies. So I just thought I'd be a penciler. I was hoping I'd be a penciler one day. That was my first love, but animation I got really um, fell hard for when I was around 13 or so, and I was taking classes at SVA after school classes on Saturdays, and I think that they had a summer weekend program where you would learn how to animate. Just high school kids were allowed to come in, and it was free. My mother found out about it, I guess, and it was terrific. And I basically threw comics aside for animation. I would go to see any animated film, sit through it twice if I could. I had a subscription to Funny World. I think my father got me that. He would also get me subscriptions to things. I asked him. I got the Monster Times, and I got which was a great monster magazine that also covered comics. A lot of comics that at that point I'd never heard of, like the Thunder Agents, things like that. Wally Wood, EC, they covered a lot. Eerie, creepy. Um, but Mike Barrier's Funny World was the first serious magazine about animation. It didn't just have things about what Disney was doing, but about John and Faith Hubely were doing, and independent animators, John Canemaker, who I ended up studying with at NYU. So that lasted quite a while. And even though I got back into comics, I went to New York University Film School to learn to be an animator, which in the 80s was career suicide because there was no work. The TV animation boom that began in the 90s. I mean, Disney was in the water until The Little Mermaid propped them back up.
Right.
There was nothing to animate except Ralph Bakshi would come and exploit kids, or Sesame Street, which paid nothing if you tried to get work, or you might be an assistant on something, but there was just not much commercial animation prospects at studios. Everything was in a pit. But it revived years later. You had The Little Mermaid, Batman the Animated Series, things like that, and then TV animation just blew up. In fact, I ended up getting a job coming out of college doing storyboard cleanup for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles show the first year. I did like 4 board cleanups from somebody I met in college who I did a favor for on a school project, and he got, as a favor, he got me work, FedEx the stuff to New York, FedEx it back to California. But I didn't work in animation until the 90s on Space Ghost, Coast to Coast, which was comics. In film school, I basically
Right.
learned I liked comics more than animation. Animation is really hard, especially if you're trying to do little films by yourself. And it's so much work. And if, let's say I did get a job at a studio, let's say I became an animator or an in-betweener or whatever, you're working on scenes and or characters, and I'd rather work on stories, full stories. And comics allows you to do that. And I wasn't good at collaborating with people because sometimes you get somebody who you thought was an absolute schmuck, like Mike DeLuca, who ended up quitting and then becoming one of the biggest names in Hollywood, but still a schmuck, and actually worse than a schmuck. Or you worked, or you were asked to do things that you just thought were dumb because, and you didn't want to work on certain projects, which is, you end up doing a lot in your life. But I just thought I can go and make my own comics. Why, or just go back to trying to be a penciler. And I had no career sense, like a lot of cartoonists, unfortunately. I was like, if I can become a penciler doing fill-ins at Marvel by the time I'm 30. So I was working in a comic shop and I was working in a nightclub, a punk new wave nightclub. So I had work, you know what I mean? I was like, I don't mind doing this and then doing my comics on my off hours. So animation was, I was die hard for animation, and then animating at NYU and actually making short films and things like that was so, it just burnt me out. It just at film I went to film school and spent a lot of my parents' money to learn that I wanted to do comics. But yeah, animation was a big deal for me. So the idea that I ended up falling into animation again is was nuts. That I ended up doing professional animation work, writing and designing was was bizarre.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure some of that latent sort of interest laid sort of fallow for a while, and then when offered, the possibility, especially once you had gotten into writing and storytelling, um,
Yeah,
that
writing is where is where things happen, because I did take some screenwriting classes at NYU and I enjoyed those, and I learned that I liked writing a little bit. I always thought of myself as an artist who writes, and these days I consider myself a writer who draws, because my concepts and things are better. I mean, I'm not a great artist by any means. I'm a good cartoonist, but I'm not a good technical artist at all. My dressmanship is weak, anatomy, the fundamentals. I've never learned them. But the reason I got hired for Space Ghost Coast to Coast was because of the Milk and Cheese comic. Somebody gave Mike Lazo at the Cartoon Network, pre-Adult Swim, a copy of the Fun with Milk and Cheese book from SLG, and he thought that the banter, the writing, the dialogue between the two characters would be good. Try me out to write a Space Ghost episode, because they weren't quite sure about the dialogue for Zorak and Moltar, the sidekicks, the band leader and the
Mhm.
show runner, engineer, whatever he is, Moltar, the Molten Man. And my wife and I worked on it together, and we got hired. We ended up working for them for a couple of years, and that led to Eltingville. And some of our other work led to my other comics work led to my being asked to write for Freakazoid. But long story short, things fell apart and a lot of people left the series before it premiered because they changed the approach to the series. It was supposed to be a comedy half-hour adventure, kind of like Batman, but humor, and it turned more into a Tiny Toons for superheroes. WB, character, more jokes, more characters. Make more toys. So some of the producers left, including Paul Dini, who was the one who wanted to hire me. But when they ended up doing Superman, they hired Sarah and I to do that. So for a while, we had a pretty good run for a while between Superman. We did a Batman Beyond. we were asked to do more of those, but we did the Eltingville pilot, which failed, but was a great opportunity. And I guess years later, the main thing we did was Yo Gabba Gabba, which was the first live action we ever wrote. But we did a lot of animation work on that, writing and designing for that as well. Super Martian Robot Girl episodes, cartoons, which had a visual based on the Spider-Man segments from the Electric Company
Mm,
from
right.
back in the 70s, which the Christian Jacobs was definitely drawing on. We were only hired to draw the comic book covers and design the costume. But again, long story short, something happened to the live action that they decided to turn them into cartoons using the soundtracks. Nickelodeon didn't like the live action segments with the character, so they were in a rush to fill that gap, and they asked us to provide designs and kind of direct one or two at the beginning. Really set up flash cartoons. So that was the only time I really got to use my animation background because I'd have to draw poses. And Sarah and I were Sarah was working on the logistics of everything. She did all the color design and any rewriting we needed to do, which was very minimum because they'd already shot those first five or six. But it was really funny because I have most of the art still for it, but we had to draw all these monsters and kids and background characters and props and backgrounds actually. And I'm like, this is the only time I actually felt like an animator, even though I wasn't doing the physical animation. We were providing all the mouth flaps, the mouth shapes, movements for speaking. It was pretty wild, and it was also done on such a tight schedule. So we had all this animation art all over the floors. I mean, I was literally working on the floor because some of it had to be large to catch the details. So yeah, I did get to finally use. Wow, sorry, my cat just. I didn't realize my cat just bit the hell out of me and ripped me out. Thanks, Winky. I'm bleeding. So maybe she says I'm talking too much. I wouldn't put it past her. So yeah, I did get to use my animation training for a year, which was terrific. Yo Gabba Gabba was a really beautiful experience. Absolutely fantastic. It was geeky, it was nerdy, and it was fun work with good people who trusted the people they hired to do what they hired them to do. So I don't think I've worked in animation for quite a while now. Well, oh yeah, we did some Bibles that never got produced, which we did a Commandy Bible
Oh, okay. Like a show Bible.
10, I don't know how many years ago, but we did a Commandy Bible, which was one of the best things I think Sarah and I ever did. We had so much fun with that. And that was for Warner Brothers. And we did a Bible for a Bruce Timm project that didn't go anywhere as well. And then we did the Metal Men segments for DC Nation. So yeah, we have
Oh,
people who weren't really trying and didn't have a an agent. We ended up on a bunch of shows that were pretty fun and allowed us to be nerds and play with superheroes. I think we've done more superhero work in animation than in comics, which is funny,
yeah.
you
From what
know.
I can tell, that's right. I wanted to back up and ask about sort of this transition from do-it-yourself cartoonist and someone who was not a fan of sort of the early collaborative efforts in animation to someone who eventually became a writer and so therefore as far as the comics medium goes is naturally a collaborator with new artists. Do you remember the first project you were just a writer on, and was it
Yeah.
strange to be writing for someone who was not you and going to
No,
be
yes and no. Yes and no. I
draw?
did a run. My first solo comic was called Pirate Corps,
Yeah.
which was very super genre, Star Wars, It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, and punk rock influenced thing, and influenced by my friends and going to clubs and stuff like that. And it became Hectic Planet when I moved it over to SLG. But that was the first thing that I landed in the days of the you know Turtles frenzy, the black and white boom and bust, where lots of people who weren't quite ready to be in comics got into comics anyway because publishers were cropping up everywhere to do black and white books.
Yeah.
So I had done something called Figments, which I penciled, and then while the writer was creator was trying to sell that, I met some people that saw my Pirate Corps artwork, which was originally Marvel character. I wanted to pitch them as Marvel characters, back in the day. And I never sent it in. I never sent in any pitches to Marvel DC. I was too nervous and anxious. Uh, it's an entire different discussion about how I got into this industry, despite the fact that I never had a portfolio, and I only went on meetings with somebody taking me to them, a writer or a collaborator. But Pirate Corps got me a job at Eternity Comics, who was my publisher, writing something called Wild Nights, which was a spin-off of the X-Mutants books. It
Okay.
took place in the same post-apocalyptic universe. And I was writing them full script. I think I was going to college at the time. And I know I was I was not full time yet. I was definitely working at the Red Spot, the club, because I remember getting a package of new comics of Wild Nights once and just taking them in and showing them to people. It was weird, but I think the weirdest thing working on Wild Nights was the artist never stayed steady. We had different artists almost every 2 issues. People were constantly moving off and coming in. And it was an interesting experience because I would see what it was a learning experience. It's not a good comic, but everybody working on it was learning. And I penciled the covers. I was doing the covers, and I was being inked by Scott Hanna, and that was the first time I was ever inked by anybody. And Scott's terrific, and I haven't run into Scott in ages, but Scott really made my stuff look good. And he got better, I mean, but we were all learning, and I was trying stuff out. Um, there are people who still like what I did on Wild Nights, but I'm not a fan of it. But it's your early work is always going to be a mess, pretty much. So few people come out of the gate perfectly formed as an artist or writer or cartoonist. Most of us learn. Unfortunately, the public pays to watch us learn. You can see everybody's artwork develop. And my earliest work was absolutely subpar. My writing was not was awkward. My art was not good. But the industry was smaller, so there were less people floating around, and some people liked hanging out with me or hearing me crack jokes or just being a goof at a convention. And I got hired for a bunch of things, and I stuck around. I got better. But the first thing that I wrote for somebody that trying to think of the first thing that I wrote that it was like, it felt like it was Predator. Yeah, the Predator, which that was difficult because I was really trying. I didn't know who the artist was going to be, and it was the first time I felt like I was really writing a comic, if that makes any sense, because I knew people would see it. Wild Nights was totally under the radar. It was, not paid attention to, but the Predator book had done spectacularly for Dark Horse, and this was the follow-up. This was one of the follow-ups. And funny enough, the industry went into another ditch, and it sold very poorly compared to the previous ones. But I worked so hard on that thing. Um, it is hard because you see it, often when I write a script, I just turned in a script for the EC revival at Oni Press, and I draw them out often if I can't quite articulate it in words. I will draw it out for myself and then use my layouts and to figure out how I want to pace things, and then I'll write the script off of those, difficult pages. But Predator, all I did was I was writing it full script, and I was trying too hard. I just did a podcast about this with Derek Thompson, the artist on it. We both felt like we both had imposter syndrome. We were talking about it. I didn't feel like I was a real writer, and he didn't. He was just starting out as an artist, and he was younger than I was. It was his first comic. This was my first serious comic. I mean, Wild Nights was my first, but I almost don't count it because it was just knocking stuff out and having fun jerking around. This was like I felt like I was on a real stage that people were going to pay attention to, and I had serious flop sweat. It's hard because especially when you're an artist, you see things in your head a certain way that you know you're not gonna. Every once in a while, I write something and you get it back. When I did a Bill and Ted series with Roger Langridge, a lot of it was along the lines of how I saw it in the script, or very close to it. We're both cartoonists, and we both work in a kind of more classical humor style. He's a much better artist than I am, but we both, we like humor comics and humorists and things. So it was really interesting how that worked out. Um, but you know what? I'm on the whole, everyone who I've worked with draws better than me. So I love seeing those pages come in to see the Superman Adventures pages that Sarah and I wrote. We did a Supergirl one shot where we used a lot of the material that wasn't we didn't get to use in the animated series for the two-parter. We got to bring in all this stuff. We got to bring in the new gods and things. And Brett Blevins, seeing the artwork coming in on that, and he was a storyboard artist on the show, and he's a terrific comic artist, was
Fantastic.
phenomenal. I have
Yeah.
Xerox of all the pencils, and then that was inked by Terry Austin. So to me, it's one of the biggest geek out moments is when you write something for someone, and obviously, if anybody who likes my work, the biggest example of that would be World's Funnest for DC, the World's Funnest
Mhm.
one shot that I did, where I was getting pencils in and art in and paintings in from David Mazzucchelli and Jaime Hernandez and Jim Woodring and Dave Gibbons, for God's sakes. I got to write 20 pages for Dave. I got Frank Miller, Alex Ross, uh, 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 Frank Cho, Mike Allred. It was just insane. Stuart Immonen and Joe Giella. We tried to pair up so many people that made sense for each segment of that comic. And Ty Templeton, who I adore his work. My memory is fading on me. Shelley Moldoff, who designed Batmite, who's one of the main characters in it. That was the biggest geek out, other than seeing some of our scripts animated. But as a comic book fan, to have Dave Gibbons and David Mazzucchelli, Jack Kirby was just amazing. And that was a incredible year plus of working on a comic that I wrote for other people, because who gets to write for Jaime Hernandez? And David Mazzucchelli wasn't doing superhero comics anymore. So for him to do that as a favor for me was just utterly fantastic. And to see the work, I'm a Brian, I got a Brian Boland cover. It was just, I was the most useless person on the book, my friend Stephen DeStefano, who's amazing. Yeah, it's just that was an incredible, and I got turned down by incredible people. Will Eisner turned us down. Um, um, Trying to think who else, but it was we were supposed to work with Dick Sprang on the Golden Age section,
Oh
and
yeah.
unfortunately he passed away
Mm.
rather than work with me. It happens, and but that was an awesome
Anything to get
that
away.
that as I love my own comics, some of them, and I love Beasts of Burden is probably my favorite, you know, co-owned project, maybe with Jill Thompson, but World's Funnest will always be, and it's again another project that didn't matter and nobody cared, even though I had this murderer's row of artists working with me, you know. But the book, for several reasons, didn't sell well. One being it's a comedy, and two, Wizard was having a fight with DC at the time and wasn't covering their books as heavily. So early on, when the project was announced, they would just show sketches by Alex Ross in the front of Wizard. So we got a lot of talk about it. By the time the book came out, we got one paragraph in the back of the magazine. Oh my God, we must have been the only project that had Alex Ross, Frank Miller, and Dave Gibbons that didn't get bought. But now it's again, a funny thing is I'm old enough to see these things getting reprinted. It's World's Fun is still never has made me a dime, which is fine, but it's been reprinted like 3 times in the last couple of years in
Wow.
other books. So that's fun. New people get to see it, hopefully.
You
Because
seem to discover these new headwinds during your career that
well,
maybe we didn't know existed, like
yeah, I
Wizard
mean,
having a fight with DC and
oh well,
other
that was
things.
yeah, that well because nobody talks about that stuff. But yeah, Wizard and DC were having some. slap fight over some nonsense, I'm sure. And so Wizard was basically, well, fine, we won't cut. So yeah, the book did not do very well. It never turned a profit. I don't know. I don't think if it's turned a profit in the reprints either. But I mean, I don't care. It's a cult book that's beloved by, I don't know, 18, 20 people. But I thought if you have 18 artists on the book, forget the names of these people. If you're going to sell to the fans of 18 artists should pick it up. But because it was a joke, it was a humor book and it didn't take place in continuity. Basically, if your book doesn't take place in continuity, unless you're Frank Miller and doing, or you just you hear people say it doesn't matter. That's the phrase you hear. It didn't matter because it wasn't
Right.
the Superman Adventures, those books, even though they were done by the people who did the cartoon, Batman Adventures, it doesn't matter. Even though people loved the cartoons and bought the action figures, they didn't buy the comics, and they were done by, Paul Dini, Bruce Timm, Glenn Murakami, Brett Blevins, Sarah and I, all these people that worked on the show. Really, really good people. But it was not, it didn't matter because it didn't plug into what was happening in the real comics. And it's all made up, but you can't convince some people of that. Certain comics matter and others don't. To me, it's a good story is what counts, you
Yeah,
know?
absolutely.
I'd rather
I
have
feel
one good
like, go ahead.
oddball comic than 50 that matter that you don't enjoy, but you buy them you buy Spider-Man or X-Men or Batman, and I'm not knocking any, but I did it. You bought comics you didn't like because you had the others. You had to keep it going. I remember a friend of mine, my roommate, he was like, I hate Punisher, but I gotta buy it. I have all the others. And I'm like, just step off the bus for a while. Another one, you'll be happy when somebody else comes along driving the bus that you like better. But we all do it though. I mean, I bought plenty of comics for years because you just hope it gets better. Didn't like Tales of the Teen Titans didn't like Teen Titans, after Perez left and a few changes happened, but God damn it, I have them all. I'm buying every single one. So, I mean, that's the fan thing. But yeah, I
We've all
mean,
been there.
a good comic is a good comic. I don't care about the drawing style. I don't care about whether it matters. It plugs into continuity. All it has to be is fun or good or exciting. As far as talking about mainstream comics,
Yeah.
they don't have to be depressing. They can be, and that's cool too. But in general, the depressing stuff tends to be in the alt indie area of comics. Not too many. My dad was in concentration camp stories in Superman or the
No,
Flash,
no.
which is good because it would be handled pretty badly.
So I feel like the out of continuity stories that are taken seriously are the ones that are very serious. I
Yeah,
think the ones that are out of continuity that are just more fun and funny, I think fans are sort of because I think this is because the readership has grown up um, in terms of being the readership is more adults now. And so they're willing to go outside the mainstream for something that they consider more adult and to their age range where they see and probably look down on, not that they should, sort of something that is more funny, fun, what they would consider sort of kid
I
material.
think it's different now, but I think there's still vestiges of the comics need to validate their interest in serious comics. That Batman's not silly.
Right.
Batman is not zebra Batman or rainbow Batman. You're only allowed so much humor at Marvel and DC. There can only be one or two ongoing humor books, and
Right.
generally they're short. You can have these days Steve Lieber and Matt Fraction doing Jimmy Olsen. Then you can have Metamorpho. These are weird characters, and people are very happy to see them come back. And especially if you have somebody like Matt Fraction writing it, it's going to get attention paid to it. Steve. But when you think about it, the only real humor that's been allowed has been the Justice League stuff that J.M. DeMatteis and Keith Giffen
Giffen.
and mostly Kevin McGuire worked on. The Bwahaha Justice League is allowed to happen. Uh, that always seems, if they bring that back, it always seems to get an Eisner nomination. There's a big fan base that's happy to see that. Deadpool could be funny. Howard the Duck can be funny, but he doesn't laugh. You know what I mean? He gets a miniseries, but that's about it.
Yeah.
And there used to be a lot of humor in Marvel Comics. The Thing, the Beast, Hawkeye, those characters were, there wasn't the humor wasn't necessarily sardonic and quippy and cynical. I mean, I guess it was always quippy, except that everybody overwrote the jokes back then, so they weren't just, banter. They were, making fun. The Thing was basically saying punchlines from old radio shows, for Christ's sakes. But I mean, tastes change. But yeah, comedy is there is no ongoing. Is there an ongoing comedy book at any of the companies? I mean, I guess you can say Deadpool is a comedy book, but he's the action is I think the action and the craziness and the violence goes hand in hand with that character. But he's allowed, and that's really it. No, you can, everything else, everything has to be very, very serious. I
Hmm.
remember when I this is sounds like bullshit, but I remember going up to DC before I was getting steady work, but I knew people who were working on DC books. And back then you could go to Marvel and hang out or go to DC and sit outside. There was a couch out there for people who were waiting for meetings and you could show your portfolio. I didn't do that. I went there and just hung out and waited for Kyle Baker or Stephen DeStefano or Robbie Bush to get done with their meeting. And I, walk in with them sometimes. I walked in once because I was trying to say hello to Paris Cullins, who was working on Blue Devil. And it turned out Paris was late on an issue and they had him in an office working and they wouldn't let anybody talk to him, which was funny as hell. And I was trying to get a job. How small my goals were back then. I was desperately wanted to do an entry for Who's Who. Like they could give me the worst character. I had done a Marvel. I don't know if I had done a Marvel Universe character then. I had done one for Marvel, Spitfire, but it was Spitfire in her non-costume form, and nobody just wanted to draw an old lady, so they could give that one to a newcomer bum like me. And I really wanted to do a Who's Who character, and I wanted to do a jerky one. So I was like, I ended up in the offices sitting around waiting for people to be done so we could go hang out. And I said something about like doing a Batmite page. Could I do a Batmite page to somebody else? And Paul Kupperberg goes into this semi-joke rant about how Batmite will never be in a comic book again. None of that stuff is ever going to be, Batmite will never exist. Batmite is nonsense. We don't do Batmite, like, because he was like he took it personally that Batmite was silly and that kids loved Batmite at one point, and it dragged the serious Batman down. Oh, Dark Knight Batman's gonna disappear because there's a now. First of all, Batmite ends up in the Who's Who anyway, of course, and he ends up in a million things. They did, there's toys, there's plush, there's statues. He's in Batman. Uh, what the hell was that? What was that Batman series that was very Silver Age based? The comic, the animation. Um,
Oh, Batman Adventures.
No, it was a cartoon. It was like Batman. Uh,
Oh,
well, Batmite was in it,
Brave and the
and
Bold.
Brave and the Bold, which is a fun show. I've seen a few episodes and I really liked it.
Yeah.
Uh, it embraced the silly stuff, but I just thought also the plot. This is a really good superhero episode. This is good plot mechanics. This works. This is 22 minutes of fun, and it's a machine that really, really works. And yeah, I mean, they have some silly characters show up, and that's great for people like me. But I just thought, what a fun show! I wish I could have grown up on a show like that. And yeah, that might, nothing is going away because nobody knows what might make money. Nobody knows what might become a Funko Pop at this point. Characters like the Spot, this obscure, ridiculous looking Spider-Man villain. There's a toy of him. There's a toy of like everything. Everything is going to have a toy at one point, or be in a show in a background, or in a cartoon, except for Fight Man, of course. And I believe that I will never see Fight Man as anything, not even a pog. But I mean, they're I mean, what is it? Polka Dot Man, right? Isn't there Polka Dot Man in one of
Uh,
those?
yeah, one of the DC in the
Who the
Suicide
fuck
Squad,
would
I think.
ever? Who the fuck would have ever banked on Polka Dot Man? I mean, you could see the shark or something because it's a big nasty shark, or
Yeah.
these or Solomon Grundy. I mean, things that were on those funny TV shows in the '70s. Sinestro and Solomon Grundy, but now they're all serious. I mean, there's more playfulness, I think, from what I gather, in the movies than there is in the comics. You
It's
know,
true.
there's Joe. I've seen the trailers for the Thunderbolts, and there's definitely a lot of humor going on in there. There's definitely humor in the Spider-Man books, in the Spider-Man movies. I did see the first one, and I mean, you look at, I mean, Batman's not allowed to have humor, I guess, because he's so serious, because he's pissed off because he can't turn his neck when he's in a fight. I'd be pissed too if everybody could just jump up on top behind me because I got this fucking idiot rubber bat thing on my head. But whatever. Comics are serious. Batman's serious, even though he looks like an idiot.
You gotta
Uh,
look cool.
he doesn't look cool though. That's the funny thing. Batman looks like he's got these bat ears. He looks like a schmuck. And I don't mind that. I love that. But to me, it's like go with it. Just go with it. Let everything be
Yeah.
crazy. I mean, it's not real. I mean, I hated the Burton Batman movie, and it's like right off the bat they had this crazy, characters are all in shock that got beat up by him. They go, it was a bat, a giant bat. What are you fucking kidding me? He was 5 feet in front of you. It's a guy in a fucking costume. He looks like a moron, and he can't move his head. How can you fight crime if you can't move your head? But whatever. It's a bad action movie. And I think people are probably, now that they have lots of new Batman movies, can go, yeah, Batman, that first Batman movie is kind of not that good, but whatever.
And they solved
So,
the head turn eventually.
did they?
Yeah, the last couple
That's
have
progress. That's
had sort
terrific.
of,
Thank thank
movable
God for
necks.
movable Batman head.
Yeah.
That's all you need,
It's
obviously.
it semi ruins the silhouette a little bit if I'm gonna be
Who
put my
cares
geek
about
hat
the
on,
silhouette?
but whatever.
Once they
You
put
can't
this
satisfy everybody.
once they well, that's for true. I'll give that to everybody making superhero comics or license, big two superhero comics. You're never going to satisfy everybody. That's a I think they all do know that at this point. I mean, that's what the Eltingville Club came out of. Disappointed, crazy. There's disappointment and then there's toxic.
Yeah.
And that's what Eltingville literally came out of hate mail that a friend of mine got for writing a character's dying in the Justice League in the 90s. And he got hate mail and death threats. And yeah, and you had to actually really think about it because unlike the internet, they had to write these things down in paper,
Right.
address it, get a stamp, and not once do these people go, you know what? I'm sending hate mail. I'm telling somebody that they suck and that they should die because they killed a fictional character that's going to
Right.
come back in a year or so.
Right.
Not even a big important one. Unbelievable. It's just comics, man. Nobody should get uptight about it. I'm off topic, but anyway. I'm always off topic, but yeah, it's all fan talk. You get crazy. I don't
Yeah.
go to the comic
Yeah.
book store as much as I used to, so I don't talk about this stuff. But yeah, it's just comics, man. It should be, you know what I mean? Just if you didn't like that issue, wait for the next one. If you don't like that one, stop buying the book for a while.
Right.
Vote with your dollars and buy something else.
Exactly.
That's entertainment, man. People freaking out on the internet about a superhero movie. These people should be like pigs in shit right now. They're getting the best nerd experience that ever existed in the last 50 years. In the history of pop culture, they've won. All the fucking movies are science fiction, horror, fantasy, and superheroes rule the roost. The TV shows, the cartoons, the games, pinball now is everything is nerd shit. Why would anybody be upset? All the old stuff's available and the new stuff every couple of months there's a new superhero movie or a new Godzilla movie for God's sake or a new name the franchise, Star Wars, Star Trek, everything is fucking back. Everything that it's 50 years old, some of this stuff. And it's all over. Doctor Who, man, people should just go to bed happy as hell that they know that their nerd shit's not going to be taken away, that
Right.
it's not all going to be canceled. I mean, I don't know how old I'm 60. Growing up, we watched anything that had superheroes in it if we were fans because you were never going to get anything else. So you watched kids shows like the Electric Company because they had a Spider-Man segment. You watched the Justice League roast, the roast for the Super Friends, which was comedy and terrible. You watched the Star Wars Christmas special. You watched Flash Gordon cartoon because the Spider-Man cartoon, the whole cartoon, and even though they weren't satisfying because they were really jerky, you watched it because that was all you were going to ever get. A cartoon every couple of maybe a year, maybe 2 years you'll get a Spider-Man or you'll get a new Batman. But I mean, there was never everything superheroes, everything Star Wars. You had to wait years for a new Star Wars movie. There was Star Wars novelizations and comics. That was as far as it went. And now these people are growing up in, they're surrounded by this stuff as if it's air they need to breathe and water they need to drink. And they're still bitching and moaning, some of these people. Unfucking believable. All we had were fan magazines to tell us about the stuff we couldn't see. The stuff that we couldn't
Yeah,
find. I didn't find Thunder Agents comics for 20, 30 years until they were reprinted at DC. I mean, people don't know how good they have it as far as junk culture and pop culture. This is the golden age, man. Everything's
exactly.
everything's at your fingertips. Nobody laughs at you if you dress up in a costume and go on the subway to a convention now. They know what it is. They know that there's people that cosplay. There are people who are making money playing D&D on the internet. You have to be good looking now to play D&D. What the fuck? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's crazy times. But it's wonderful crazy times. You know, you can make comics and put them on the web. You can role play with people that live in other countries. There's a convention. There's like multiple conventions every week. It's beautiful, and yet there are people that are still acting like Eltingville trolls. Oy. You can make money acting like a troll. I mean, that's which just sucks, but I mean it's true. Fandom, there is no need to be sending crazy mail at anybody because you don't like the way they wrote a comic.
oh,
All you have to do is say,
totally agree.
all you have to say is, I don't like the way you wrote a comic. I think I'm going to be dropping the title.
Or guess what? You don't have to say anything.
Right. You can go online and just argue this stuff, but argue it as if real people, characters do not matter more than real people. I'm sorry.
Yeah, of
The
course.
people who make this stuff, who distribute it, who edit it, who draw it, write it, film it, act it, the actors get the fucking, especially if they're not white men, accepted white male bodybuilders or whatever. Uh, there's no reason to hate anybody for taking a job to make stuff you don't personally like. I don't personally like what most of these people probably like. I mean, that's not a life. But anyway, that's what the Eltingville Club is about. Not having a
Yeah,
life, making your hobby your life, and not realizing how toxic you are and what a social disaster you are. But didn't have that when I was a kid. That's for sure. Somebody acted obnoxious. You just stopped. You just in the comic shop. You just walked away from them. You know. But you weren't exposed to that stuff too badly. The comic shop owners were actually the worst. They were always bitching and moaning about stuff, to be honest. They were the ones
yes.
who you'd buy a comic and you'd have to hear a long spiel like what I do from the comic shop owner because you're a trapped audience waiting for him to ring you up. And he'd bitch at you about what was going on in Batman and what he thinks DC should do and how Marvel's fucking it up. That's the only complaints I remember as a kid.
Yeah,
They,
there's still those folks around.
yeah.
But thankfully, I think that's changing as well too. I think there's a
I,
new crop of shop owners that are
oh yeah, no, no. Shops are much better than they used to be too. That's another
yeah,
thing. There are shops that you are not that they actually clean and they
yeah,
treat you like a customer rather than a comic book fan that they can argue. I was a bad comic shop worker for most of my time because I was a judgmental asshole. I would goof with people if they were buying stuff. I thought I was like, why are you buying Green Arrow? It's bullshit. I love and rock. Like, that's not how you sell comics, number one. I've apologized to many people I used to wait on. And two, it's never your place as a clerk to put down anything anybody's buying. You can try to sell people other stuff by being positive about the other stuff.
sure.
The only reason they kept me was because I was a good salesman. I could sell comics. If I could, based on your T-shirt. I mean, a lot of us at the shop, we were really proactive, and I think shops are way much more like this. If you walk into a shop now, somebody sees your T-shirt with a band on it, they could probably have 5 comics they could recommend. If you're looking for something, if you like Doctor Who, they could, you know what I mean? More full service shops exist that don't just buy Marvel and DC. Um, but shops are weird. Shops, You don't in the direct market, you don't sell comics to people, you sell them to retailers. And if a retailer does not like your book, there are a lot of retailers who will not buy it, even if they have a customer ask for it, which I've always said is like going to a shop and going to a store, a grocery store run by a comic shop owner would be like, how come you don't have coffee? I don't drink coffee. I think coffee is stupid. I don't order coffee. But comic shops can act that way. They can act as a fan conduit and a gatekeeper because it's their shop and they're the only shop in town usually. So you go in there and you're like, you're never going to see a Fantagraphics book. You won't see anything from Dark Horse that isn't Hellboy or, things like that. I mean, now also the industry is so huge, it's hard to order everything and you shouldn't order everything. I'm not saying anybody should, but for the first time in the last few years, I've seen people talking about how they'll go into shops and they don't even carry all the DC and Marvel lines,
Yeah.
which it used to be. If you walked into a store and they didn't order at least a couple of copies of everything from Marvel and DC, you thought you were in like the Twilight Zone. I don't know the retail market as well. I mean, I can't, go spiel on that. I mean, I do go to my local comic store. I was very close to friend Michael, who had Sacco had a store out here, Comic Book Jones, and I was in there every week and I'd help out a lot. And I was in retail for 6 years, but I mean, the industry obviously has changed quite a bit. But stores are definitely there are stores that look like I remember when we had one of our stores and somebody came in and said, "This place is great. It looks like any other store." And we took that as a compliment. We knew what they meant by
Yeah.
that. It didn't look like somebody's basement with uh, dollar bins up to the ceiling and dust and taped up comics in the window and posters that were yellow and
Yeah.
dirt on the floor and you go in there and you go, well, do you have such and such? And the guy will point to you and tell you to go there instead of just trying to be a salesman because you're bothering him because he's watching TV. I mean, the store stuff I put in Eltingville is all based on real stores I've been to or have been told to by other store workers who ended up in the industry that I knew. The store where the guy used a laser pointer to show people where the things were because he wouldn't get up from behind the counter is real. The store where they had a baby pool in the drop ceiling to catch rainwater because they wouldn't fix the roof and it crashed down is real, except I didn't get to do it because I had putting out a fire in Eltingville, but the store owner hosed down the rest of the store to claim more damage for the insurance, which is brilliantly evil. Probably made more money. That's the way to make money in a comic. So comic shop owners, I'm very hard on comic shops. I always have been. I literally had a comic shop owner blow up at me at San Diego and start pounding my table and cursing me out because of something I said at the Eisners. But it's a really hard business. It's such a small. There's so much stuff to look at to order. You're guessing all the goddamn time before books have come out. Everybody, the same reason that Marvel and DC are all safe bet, generally all safe bet comics, is the reason that you have to order safe bet comics from them. But I mean, there are so many good shops right now that are open to everyone that don't make uh, people who are just, coming off the street a lot. I mean, I've heard so many complaints. Everybody has heard the women who will not come into a store or do not stop going to a store because they found it an ugly experience or just depressing uh, or miserable experience going into a shop. Uh, that happens a lot less. I mean, there's shops owned by women. There are shops
Yeah.
open by people of color. I mean, that's what the industry needs. Everybody wanted the industry to grow. I mean, back when I was in retail, everybody wanted, why aren't there more women reading comics? And then when women start wanting to read comics, they got yelled at. They got accused of being fake fans. They got, oh yeah, name 5 variants of kryptonite from some people. And they get bombed on the internet to this day. And they want comics to be more validated and more popular so that their hobby, they get more of what they want and they'd feel like, hey, check it out. You're not a jerk to be a wrestling fan anymore. Which happened. You're not a jerk to be a Batman fan anymore, which happened. So everybody should be happy, right? Right? Nobody looks at you and goes, I can't believe you read comic books. Do they still make those? That stopped happening. Comics win Pulitzers for fuck's sake. I mean, there are comics of it's a medium that they make every genre of that you're into. I could sell a comic to anybody. A friend of mine did not like comics, did not like reading comics, was slightly dyslexic, because some people do have a problem reading comics. Comics is a language, and some people they don't follow they do have problems with it, and that's an
Right.
entry level problem we have for comics. And we were in St. Mark's Comics, and we were looking at stuff. A group of us were going to a concert, but beforehand we were shopping and get something to eat. And I said, I can sell you a comic book. And she's telling me, I don't like comic books. And I know she read, she's not. And I showed her What's Michael, the manga, which is about cats. And she bought it because it's about cats. And I knew she loved cats. And I showed her, look how this, and you had to I don't know if What's Michael read manga style or Dark Horse had it flipped or not, because
Flip.
this is the 90s. I know they've reprinted it recently, but I mean, that's one thing I was good at. If you came in with a punk rock shirt, I was showing you neat stuff and Love and Rockets. If you came in with a heavy metal shirt, I knew books that you might, Conan and things like that. And I think that's something that's happened across the board is the salesman. You have to be more proactive to get more people into comics, because there's still people who's like, I don't like comics. I'm not interested in comics. And I'm like, there's a Doctor Who comic. I know you love Doctor Who. Or there's, Star Wars stuff, and, or there's Godzilla, or you like history, I mean, you like jokes, you like humor, you like satire, you like comics about the economy. We have this, we have biographies, we have comics about horrible events, events, about good people, horrible people. There is a comic book for everyone out there. Um, I guess not for blind people, but I guess you could do an audio book where you're saying what's in. I mean, I think they have
Yeah, they're
movies.
descriptive,
So you have
captions.
descriptive. So there's comic books for
Hmm.
everybody. Yeah, they really are. And there have been for quite a while.
Sure.
And it's become something that nobody can really complain about. I mean, we obviously definitely need to hear new voice. We still need new voices, and we need new voices to be accepted, and non-white cis. And that's not knocking, I'm a white cis guy. That's not knocking white cis people. That's just saying we ruled and still rule the entertainment industry. We call, that white people still mostly make everything. So why can't you allow, why do you have a problem with anything else being made by other people for other people? If you're not interested, there's so much stuff for you to still enjoy.
Yeah,
I'm
for
sorry, is
sure.
there if a black Spider-Man or a gay person playing somebody on a show, if that's what your life is so limited to, that's got to become the big political concern of yours. That's sad, because you could just shut the fuck up, let other people enjoy comics and cartoons and animation and everything just like you do, and just avoid what you don't like. That's what
Yeah.
bathroom breaks are for. You don't like you don't like singing in a musical. You don't like singing in the middle of a Disney movie. Go to the bathroom, go get some popcorn, go play a video game, then come back, enjoy the rest of it. Let other people who like it. You don't like a certain wrestler, go to the bath, go take a bathroom break if you don't like girls wrestling. You know, then come back and enjoy what you like. For God's sakes, you're not losing out. You don't need 100. Not 100% needs to be for people like me, for white guys. There's still white guy shit out there. It's not, you know, and
Not going
hopefully
away.
there will continue to be ever more for other people, because that's how industries grow. That's how fandoms grow. That's how genres grow, because otherwise you just get the same stuff. We need other voices. We need other creators. We need other readers and fans in comics to keep to prop up what is a tough industry, because no matter how many billions of dollars everyone's making, the companies are making on the movies, they don't give that. Disney doesn't give that money to Marvel to expand, you know, and Warner Brothers isn't giving it to DC to expand. They're contracting like crazy. The joke at Marvel, when at the old location, was they only had one bathroom. You couldn't go to the bathroom if somebody was in the bathroom. Marvel, it's like, God damn it, take care of the people who are making the stories that you're basing your multi-billion-dollar movies on. That's a whole other, they treat creators like shit from up on high. They treat Marvel like shit. They treat the editors like shit. It's not, it's not an industry with a lot of people throwing money around because they're doing so well in comics.
Right.
Uh, that's why I never blame the editors or anything like that. They generally want to do good by the creators. They want to do good by the characters and the company. They are fans. I mean, that's the whole thing about comics. That another thing that Eltingville got into was, we're all fans. Nobody falls into comics going, oh shit, I can't get a job anywhere. I guess I got to do comics. Fucking comics. People love comics. They want to make comics. That's all of us want to do this. The movie stars that end up doing a comic book project, what they tend to be fans too. Some of it's just, putting my name on it to get a check and to establish a character that I own that I could try to get my production company to make into a movie. But in general, if you're writing the comics and you're drawing them, you love comics now. It's not like when I was growing up, which is when John Buscema would complain at conventions that he doesn't like superheroes. It's a job to him. And hey, more power to him. That's his deal. But it used to be you got into comics because you couldn't get a newspaper job.
Right.
Comics was where people who couldn't get syndicated or couldn't get a job as an assistant or an artist or writer on daily comic books or week or Sunday strips, and they did it to make a living, page by page, knocking out as much material as they could. Not a lot of them were not fans of what they were working on. Fans hated to hear that, but that was the truth. They got into comics because they needed to make money to support a family. Sal Buscema wasn't making enough money in advertising or whatever he was doing. John Buscema said, let me show you how to make comics. And Sal Buscema became a comic book artist. Now, I don't know what he thought about what he was doing, but it was a mechanical move. It was not the people who are like, I love Transformers. If I don't I got to work on a Transformers comic, which is a shame because this happened. And people want to work on the thing. I mean, I love a lot of things. I love a lot of geek stuff, but I will not work on something to my detriment. I will not take a job to work on something I like if it's paying shit, if I'm being taken advantage of, if the project is cheaping out on paying the artists that I'm writing for, which means I tend to do less work than I need to do. But at the same time, I'm not going to go to one of the companies that pays garbage to work on an animation based comic, just because I love Gargoyle. I don't, but just what I mean. Like there's a lot
Yeah.
of stuff
Yeah.
that I would work on. I would love to work on a Howard the Duck comic. I would love to work on a Demon comic. I would love to work on a Fantastic Four comic. There's lots of stuff that I'd be interested in. But I think there's a lot of stuff like I couldn't just go in there and pitch a story and just do it, even if they like me. Nobody at Marvel and DC knows who the fuck I am anymore, which is fine. I mean, regimes change out, but almost everybody that I worked with in the 90s and the aughts, they're gone, or they're doing something else, or they're not in a position to hire. But I mean, I stayed away from doing that stuff because I had other work to do, and I don't like being told I can't make this joke, and it's just I like to work more freely. I mean, if I do a kid's book or something like Bill and Ted's, it's like I know what the parameters are, and I did that because I just thought, I mean, I did all those Marvel books, so to do the Dark Horse prequel to the new movie coming out, it was just something that I thought fans would like. I thought I would enjoy it. I got to work with Roger Langridge, so I did. But I was also paid a nice pay, a decent page rate. But a lot of these independent mainstream companies are doing, all the, all these animation. They get a lot of these license books, and they were paying garbage. Apps they just pay sub rates that I mean, I was paid more to work on Wild Nights in 1988 to write this book nobody cared about, that barely sold, a black and white book from an independent, got no press, blah, blah. I was paid more to write that book than there are people who are getting paid to do artwork on some of these books now. And some of them sell pretty well. But I think it's an unfortunate trap that people, that we're all dealers, users. We're nerds and we're creators. We like this stuff so much. We're such fans, and fandom has become so huge in the last 25 years that there are people who are willing to work for crap money because it gets their foot in the door. But in some cases, it's more important that they get to write dialogue for or draw the characters that they grew up loving. We take advantage, the industry takes advantage of that.
So wrapping up, yeah, what are you working on now, and where can
The
fans
next thing
follow you online?
the next thing I have coming out is and I have an 8-page story in Catacomb of Torment. I'm trying to remember the name of the book from
Oh, the
EC,
EC one, right?
from Oni, and East from the EC revival. They're launching a new title called Catacomb of Torment. I think the first issue comes out in July. I have a story in the second issue. The art is being done by Lucas Kantner. And I'm looking forward to it because I think the script came out pretty good and I like his art. So fingers crossed. And I have a second script that I'm working on that's due in a couple of weeks. I think that'll be in a later issue of the same series. Really excited to do this because I like writing horror stories, and their and anthologies have not been strong. The companies that pay page rates have not been doing anthologies as much as they used to when I was when I was in the industry, because that used to be my bread and butter, doing short stories for Deadline and Dark Horse Presents, Dark Horse Comics, Oni Double Feature, et cetera, et cetera. Magazines, even fanzines. Um, I just put out Dark Horse just put out the Beasts of Burden Omnibus, which
I did
is
see that in a store this past weekend, actually.
I
I
wish you should have adopted that.
I should have adopted
It's
it.
only it's $30 for almost 600 pages,
Yeah,
about 50
it,
pages of back matter, but that's I co-created that with Jill Thompson, who illustrated it. The first she's done most of the main series. Benjamin Dewey worked on the two uh Wise Dog series that are also collected in there, and one of the issues of the main story. I'm hoping to get back on that. It's been a few years since I've been able to write that between career and health issues, my hand being messed up, and my drawing not being able to draw as much, and having a lot of pain issue management issues from carpal tunnel and arthritis got in the way of a few things. But I want to, we're it's not completed. We still have a lot more stories to tell. Hoping Jill might come back for a story or two, but we'll see. But that omnibus came out February and seems to be doing fairly well. And that's about cats and dogs in a neighborhood in Pennsylvania fighting the supernatural. There's a bit of a plague in their neighborhood, and that's an all mystery. And it's sad, it's funny, it's kind of like Watership Down meets Buffy the Vampire Hunter. I'm not the one who said that, but it sounds good to me.
sure.
To wrap it up, the I have another reprint project coming out next year that I'm not supposed to talk about, but if you like my solo cartooning in things like Dork and Milk and Cheese, a lot of that stuff's out of print right now. It should be coming back in print next year, including Eltingville, which has blown up because of a TikTok meme about a year and a half ago, and has been a very wild ride. The book is now out of print and hard to get, and I've got for the first time in my life, for the first time in my older adult life, I'm dealing with younger fans of an old project because they've discovered the comic through the pilot, which they discovered through it's on YouTube, and they discovered that through TikTok and social media. So now I'm answering like 20 questions a day from kids, which is pretty awesome. I've got like a running letters page on Tumblr and Instagram these days. I'm not sure what else. The other stuff I've got going, I can't talk about. It's all literally, I hate NDA. Can't disclose it. Some non-comic stuff, adaptations and things being developed. I am doing my commissions. My Patreon is kind of like a job, I guess. My Patreon isn't always running new artwork, updates on projects. I've been running a I've been posting the scripts to World's Funnest along with the artwork done by the artist in black and white and color if I have it, and making notes about all the different segments, how we got the artists, what I was doing, what didn't get done, what was excised, why we didn't have Vertigo in there, things like that. I've also been I'm scanning the storyboards for the Welcome to Eltingville uh, animated pilot and putting those up. And my Patreon starts at $1 a month, and it's the spine that keeps us going when while comics is a hills and valleys kind of life. But I'm hoping to get back to Beasts of Burden. I'm hoping I can continue doing a couple more horror things with Oni on this EC revival because I'm really enjoying it. I hope to bring Blackwood back at Dark Horse. Dark Horse publishes Beasts of Burden. And I think that's it for right now. Yeah, working on commissions and any new comics I do, I put on my Patreon, and hopefully I'll collect them as a Dork 12 one day. And I think that's it. I'm busy, but I can't talk about a lot of stuff, or a lot of stuff isn't anything that needs to be discussed here. It's just, I'm doing a drawing, or I feel like there's something that I'm doing that I should talk about, but geez, I don't know.
I mean,
I
it
think,
sounds like plenty.
and I have a lot of doctor's appointments. And yeah, I mean,
Do you talk about those on
I
Patreon
think
too?
I think I think the Fight Man stuff, the Agent X stuff is coming out in an upcoming reprint, and World's Funnest got reprinted a few months ago in a Justice League book, and the Predator stuff Marvel put into a omnibus. So, I'm old enough that a lot of my stuff stays in print through various channels, and I'm hoping to get some new stuff going, get some comics out again.
Super.
Yeah,
We'll look forward to all of that
learn how
and
to learn how to
put
talk
everything.
less on podcasts.
Or other than Patreon, is any other place
I'm
fans
on
can follow you?
Tumblr. It's my name. It's Evan Dorkin, because nobody else would want that name. On Tumblr, I'm on Instagram. I'm on Blue Sky. I abandoned my Twitter feed last year, or earlier this year. About 6 months ago, maybe longer. I don't remember now, because of the way Twitter is. And
You're not alone.
I think, yeah, I think that's everything. That should be everything. And I have merch of my characters on T Public. Trying to just trying to be a freelancer in 2025, and not let it everything
So you
stay
pass you by.
doing the best I can. Yeah, doing
Yeah,
the best
yeah.
I can. I'm lucky that I've been around long enough that I have a stable, small, loyal group of fans that buys my art, and buys my work, and selling original art and doing commissions and selling art on eBay has really, really helped. So yeah, I mean, I just um but yeah, though, not that I haven't talked enough, but yeah, this year has been a real weird uptick between reprint projects, being asked to do stuff, and interest in I haven't had any interest from studios or video game people or anything like that to talk to me about doing some work for them or anything like that in a long time. But all of a sudden, this year has just become. This is like the seventh podcast I've done in the last 6 weeks. I don't know what
Wow.
the hell's going on. I mean, some of them were just like direct and nostalgic, Predator or Mad Dog, but it's just been very weird that all of a sudden people seem to have remembered I existed. So who knows? Maybe there's hope for Fight Man to get a bubblegum card one of these days, or get killed in a secret war.
We will start the write-in campaign
Thank you. I
now.
appreciate that. I appreciate that. That's two letters I know we got, me and you. But yeah, yeah. Sorry, you caught me in my usual talky mood. I guess I'm never going to change. I shouldn't even apologize at this point. But
Well,
if you ever want to talk again, and I'll just be like, you hold up a paddle that says stop, and I'll answer the question and stop.
I'll bring along my
Please
Oscars
feel free.
playoff, music,
Oh yeah, that'd
orchestral
be good.
stuff.
I kind of need that. Although I'd probably talk right through it, because 60-year-old Jew from Brooklyn talks. At least this one does. But thank
Well,
you.
Evan, we appreciate you coming on and look forward to doing it again. And
It was
yeah,
it was fun to talk about stuff that I normally don't talk about, which is just
oh,
being a
good.
being a nerd.
Yeah,
So I enjoyed that.
that's
Power
what,
Man, man.
we're all there. Yeah,
Oh
Power
yeah,
Man.
hopefully. If you're not enjoying this, if you're not enjoying your hobby, if you're not enjoying the stuff that you supposedly love, you know,
What are you
take a
doing
step
here?
back. You gotta love this stuff. You gotta love it to read it, collect it, and make it. I mean, that's the whole point, was to have fun,
Yeah,
is to enjoy stuff, even the serious, just to have fun. This is a fun medium. You get to see people's writing and artwork. It's it's the per it's all personality based. Even if you're working on Batman, your thoughts, your interests are coming in through your pen, through your keyboard. And what's more fun than that? Writing and art, man.
Yeah.
The fact that it's a look down upon medium. I mean, less so these days, but mostly because people like it because they go, oh yeah, bad movies. So they think of success. Like my mother has no use for comics, but she knows Garfield. And when I got a job doing comics for Penthouse, comics panels and gags for one of the Penthouse magazines, that's the first time she kind of like lit up and went, oh, I understand that. It's on newsstands. It's big business.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? But the comics that I do and that I liked, used to be looked down upon. But yeah, how could you look down? How could you say comics are terrible? Comics are for losers, or comics are for morons, which gets said less these days, but it's art and writing. What is better than art and writing, man?
Right.
Maybe music and pizza, pinball, and fooling around. But it's comics are great, man. They're the best.
Great place to leave it. Evan Dorkin, thanks again, and we'll look forward to more
Thank you.
time later on.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, definitely take a step away from me before you come back to talking to me. You'll definitely need it.
And we're back. Uh, yeah, I mean, we have to have Evan on another time. Got to ask him some more pointed questions, but he got to a lot of stuff in this interview. I appreciate him coming on. I appreciate all his hot takes on fandom, on the comic industry, the sort of movie comic industrial complex, and everything. I'd love to hear, all of these opinions and his experience working in this industry for so many years. So thank you, Evan. Thank you all out there for listening and for viewing, for rating, reviewing, subscribing, helping to support the show. We'd love to see you again for the rest of our episodes. We have at least one more this week and then on and on. So we'll see you in the next issue.